This is The Road Show, and I'm your host, David Warren. On today's program, I'm going to interview a slob. Yes, you heard right, a slob. But don't get upset with me, because that's what author Dana K. White calls herself, a recovering slob. She's a blogger, speaker, and much to her surprise, a decluttering expert, and she's standing by to share realistic home management strategies and a message of hope for the hopelessly messy. At this time, let's welcome Dana K. White. Good to have you with us, Dana.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, you had an aha moment one Sunday morning back in August of 2009. And before we talk about that moment, what was your home life like before August 2009?
Well, I was a mom of three, or I am a mother of three, and I was basically living my dream of being a mother. That was my life goal. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I loved everything about being a stay-at-home mom, except that I had always assumed my entire life during which I had been ridiculously messy, that once I was a stay-at-home mom and I had nothing else to do, my home would finally be organized. Mm-hmm. I had always struggled with a messy room when I was a kid, a messy dorm in college. I was just always messy. But I just thought that was because it wasn't my focus at that time in my life. Mm-hmm. So when I became a mother and I was home and my home was my identity, and the struggle actually got much worse, it was a huge frustration for me. So even though we had a happy, healthy family, I was constantly frustrated over my inability to keep my home under control. I could clean. I knew how to clean. I could get it clean from top to bottom. I could have a party. I just needed 2 weeks to get ready. And then I would look around the house and I would say, okay, this is what I want my house to look like. I just have to keep it this way. But then 3 days later, it was completely back to being a disaster. And that was just the cycle that I went through over and over. And every time that would happen, I would get more and more frustrated. I would be less likely to have that party because I was like, really, what's the point? It's just going to go right back. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And so that's basically where I was, just in completely being frustrated mm-hmm. over my inability to do what seemed to come so easily to what I thought was the rest of the world.
Uh-huh. Well, a lot of people are identifying with your story. And you know what? You were using a lot of emotional and mental energy in just thinking about your home and its condition.
Yes. And kind of what led me to that moment, or what led me to the moment where that you're talking about in 2009, was the fact that I did want to be a writer. And I had discovered what blogs were, and I knew that was what I had to do. I was just desperate to do it. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the thing that finally motivates me to get my home under control, because I didn't feel like I could start a blog with my house being such a disaster, simply because I knew I would love blogging, and I know that I have tunnel vision. I know I throw myself into creative projects, and I knew it would just be one more thing that would take my focus away from my home.
Right.
And so that was stopping me from doing this thing I wanted to do. And I thought that motivation would help, but I still, even though I kept trying, and now I had this other reason, and I could not figure it out.
So you're at church one Sunday morning, mm-hmm. August 2009, and what happened?
Well, I was not listening to the sermon. I'm sorry. I just have to be honest about that. I usually do, but I was thinking about how my life was going to change the next day, because it was the day before school started, and my second of three kids was going to kindergarten. And so, any mom of little ones knows that the idea of not having to coordinate nap times is like a really exciting thing. To have one child who was going to go down for a nap, and actually I might have an hour or 2 hours to work on, a blog, made me think about how this would be the perfect time to start this blog that I'd been wanting to do for a year and a half, but, my house had kept me from doing that. And it was just a personal, mental block that I had. So I was thinking about that, and I was really frustrated because I had prayed about this issue many times. I had asked God to make me organized, to remove this struggle. I had prayed that it would just change, that he would change me. And he hadn't answered that prayer. And I was really frustrated because I believed that God had given me the desire to write. He had given me, awareness of this opportunity of blogs. They were a pretty new thing back then. And yet, the thing that I had asked him to cure me of that was stopping me from doing this thing that I really believed I wanted to do for him, he wouldn't take that away. And I was really angry about it, to be honest. And that's when God just said to me, write about that. And that was the moment when I had this idea, and the name of the blog came to me right then, A Slob Comes Clean, which, to be very clear, I hate that word. Everybody hates that word. Nobody wants to be called a slob. And I didn't want to use that word, but I couldn't think of another one, even though I wanted to be a writer. I could not think of another word to use. And so I just had this urgency of, okay, this could work. I could focus on my home, write about that, as a way to learn about blogging, the thing I wanted to do, while I was also, working on my home. That would be a way to stay focused. I'll get this figured out in a couple of months, and then I'll start my real blog.
Right.
And so I was just, urgently needing to get this started. And so I just started it. It was completely anonymous. I used a fake name, made up a new email address so that no one would ever trace it back to me. I didn't even tell my husband what I was doing. And I really just thought, okay, I'm going to use this temporarily, get this thing under control for once, and then I'll move on to the, writing about the things I want to write about.
So tell us about your alias, because that's a real clever part of your story.
Well, I named myself Noni because, I looked at the word anonymous, and so Noni is short for anonymous, which I pronounce it Noni. But, like my best friend always says, it's Nani. And I'm like, I made it up. I get to pronounce it out. She's like, but it's not anonymous. Anyway, so I made up the name. And, that was, I think there was a lot of freedom in that for me because I didn't have anything to hide at that point.
Right.
At that point, I had nothing to lose. I'd already called myself a slob. I'd already called myself the worst word that I had many times actually said out loud. It's not like I'm a slob, So, fake name, nobody knew I was doing this, already called myself a slob. I might as well just lay it all out there. And I really set myself on a path of being very, just completely and totally honest, other than the fact that it was a fake name. But I was just, completely honest about what was going through my head, why it was that I was or wasn't doing things that I should be doing, figuring out what I needed to do, and figuring out why these things didn't come naturally to me. So it really, I think that was a huge gift that I didn't know I was giving myself.
Well, and, choosing the word slob really helped in a Google search because people started to find you.
They did. It was kind of this weird thing, and I think most writers understand. They're like, oh, I don't want anybody to read my innermost thoughts, but I also want everybody to read it.
Right.
So even though I wasn't telling anybody in my real life about it, I was going out there and, I had read blogs for long enough that back then, one of the things that you did was join up on these link parties, like somebody would kind of do an overall subject and one of the bigger bloggers would, and then you could link your post on that subject to that, So I was trying to find some people, and yes, people were finding me through Google searches. The first one I ever found out about was, can a germaphobe be a slob? I'd written a post on that because I really struggle with germophobia, but I'm also a slob, and that doesn't make any sense. So, I kind of tried to work that out of my brain, and it was like, oh, people were finding me through searching that on Google, which was crazy to me.
Well, just so everybody can get to know Noni a little bit better, if you go to today's guest's website, which is aslobcomesclean.com, there is a section called Declutter TV, and so you can see today's guest's alias, Noni, some of her adventures with decluttering a kitchen drawer, the linen closet, the dining room table, the master bedroom, the clothes closet, etc. So this is really a lot of fun. This adventure of deslobification, as you call it, for you, for your readers, for your family members. It's become a big bunch of fun, hasn't it?
It really has. I think that, I believe that God, knits our personalities together for a purpose. And, one of the things that I've realized over the years of doing this crazy blogging thing that, was supposed to be just temporary and nobody was supposed to know about, is that one of the things I have to offer people is that I don't take life too seriously. And I don't, even though, yes, it's a huge frustration, I don't get down in the dumps about it. I just, I'm like, hey, I have to deal with this, so let's have fun doing that, and that's really been fun for me to kind of get to have this, I call it my stay-at-home mom version of performance art, because I was a former theater teacher before I, stayed home with my kids. So I get to use that part of my personality.
Well, today's guest, Dana K. White, has a new book out called How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. And what's interesting about Dana's approach is the fact that, unlike most books on this subject, which are written by A-type personalities, people that just love to arrange or clean or whatever, Dana is like the rest of us. This is reality-based cleaning and organizing. So that was your niche in getting your foot in the market with this new book. So congratulations. As we go to break, what would you say your mission is?
My mission is I try out cleaning and organizing strategies in my own home, and I tell the truth about what actually works in real life for real people.
All right. I'm David Warren, your host on today's Road Show. When we come back, Dana K. White will tell us exactly where to start to tame the chaos in our messy homes. Back after this. I'm David Warren here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world. On today's Road Show, I'm David Warren, your host, and we're going to learn how to manage our homes without losing our minds. We have a recovering slob, and I'm sorry to say that, but those are your words, Dana, but I know you say them tongue-in-cheek because they're really attention grabbers when you say those words, but I need to confess something to you right now. May I?
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I am one of those A-type personalities, also known as a clean freak. So do people like me annoy people like you?
Can I be honest?
I want you to, yes.
No. I love whatever your unique personality type is. That is awesome, and you need to own it, and you need to go with it. The thing that is annoying is when, I have this one video. I don't know how many of my videos you've watched, but I do have these videos where I play various characters.
Uh-huh.
And I'm the person struggling, and then there's a family member or whatever. And the one that my real people really love the most is the person who comes in and says, you know what you need to do? You just need, every time you pick something up and you use it, you just need to go take it back right where it goes, right then. Don't take your time and just set it down wherever. I mean, who does that? If you want your house to be clean, you just have to go put it back right now. And then the me character says, oh, thank you so much. Someday, I don't have time right now because I'm decluttering, but someday let's sit down and you tell me all about what it feels like to be perfect.
Uh-huh.
And that's just for my people, for us to kind of have that moment. I think the thing that is annoying is when people assume that the way it works for their brain is the way it works for everybody else's brain.
That's a very good
and
point.
That we're choosing to randomly lay something down and not take it back where it goes. That's just not how it functions. I mean, I have zero awareness when something gets randomly laid down in my house. I mean, ideally, absolutely, yes. I should always, after I use it, go put it back where it goes. But it doesn't happen. And so I have to have ways to combat that, you know? And so I think as long as you say, hey, everybody's different and you have to find what works for you, then we're all happy. And I love knowing that this is the thing that makes some people happy and giddy and excited. I mean, because I have things that make me happy and giddy and excited, and I want everybody to have their thing that they enjoy. So, no, I wouldn't say overall, just it's the assumption. It's the assumption that it's a choice as opposed to a struggle.
Okay, well,
that is when it's annoying.
And I appreciate that you shared that. And now something that I believe that clutter-challenged people and clean freaks do have in common is that we both can get a sense of feeling overwhelmed by the process.
Yes, absolutely.
And here's where I think we need to park it for just a little bit. And that is what I think is our biggest hurdle to cleaning our homes, no matter what our personality type is. And that is our mindset about our homes. Would you address that?
Well, one of the major things that I didn't know was one of my problems was that I have a project mentality, meaning I thrive on projects. I was a theater arts teacher. My theater productions were ridiculously organized. You know, every last detail was planned out and everything was, you know, rehearsed, practiced to where it ran like clockwork. And I mean, I would throw myself into that. Well, meanwhile, while I was throwing myself into that, my home and my office or whatever at school was completely blowing up into total chaos because I have this ability, good or bad, to be able to hyper-focus on one big project and let everything else in life just go so that I can focus on that, which is a really great thing, and we need people like that in the world. But at the same time, I didn't know that because that's where I'm successful in life, I viewed my home as a project for me to tackle as well. And that was doing more harm than good because I would wait for my home to turn into a project. You know, I would clean it from top to bottom, you know, like what I was talking about before with the parties. And, you know, yes, I could get my house ready. I would clean it. I would go like a maniac and get it completely clean. And then I would sit back and I felt like my reward was to go, oh yeah, this is what it's like to have a clean house. And then it would just go right back into disaster because when you treat something as a project, there's an end to a project. And then I would try to enjoy that end like I would enjoy the end of the play that I had directed. But meanwhile, the house was still going because there's never an end to housework. So when I realized that it was not the big project cleaning sessions that actually impacted my home long term, instead it was the stupid little boring daily piddly stuff. Stupid to me just because I was like, really, that makes that big of an impact? You know, things like just making sure that I did my dishes every single day. I had always thought doing the dishes took hours. Because I thought it took hours, I thought I had to have hours to devote to it. And because I thought I had to have hours to devote to it, I could justify putting it off. Well, the reason I thought it took hours is because I always put it off. And so it did take hours, where when I did them every day, I did them one day, the hour session, and then the next day I did them again, and it was really, truly only one day's worth of dishes. It only took me 15 minutes. And it was like, oh. And then I did them again the next day. It only took 15 minutes. And realizing that if I don't let it turn into a project and I keep it done every day, then that's what actually impacts my home. Like, I was completely shocked. I started with daily stuff just because I didn't know what to do. And I knew everything I'd ever tried hadn't worked. And so I just thought, you know what? people whose homes are under control, their kitchens are always clean. I don't know how they do it, but I'm just going to start figuring out how to keep my dishes done. And it was like, once I did that, I couldn't believe the impact it had on my overall home.
Yes.
Like just that little bitty, undramatic thing
Yes.
made such an impact. And that's when I really just focused on daily habits.
You know, somebody that you have referenced, and I'm so glad you did because you remind me a lot of her. Her name is Marla Silly. She's known as the Fly Lady. One thing I remember from interviewing her is she gave the tip, always make sure that your kitchen sink is clean. If that's all you do, you can feel good about that you got your kitchen sink clean. But
Right.
I think it has to do with what you're referring to here. Get one starting point that you can master, and a chain reaction will start to happen naturally.
Well, and yes, and it needs to be the dishes. You know?
Right.
I think is the thing for me, you know, if dishes are not your struggle because you already keep them under control, then you get to start somewhere else.
Laundry.
But, right, but those are those things, you know, I mean, you can go a while without vacuuming your floor. You can only go so far without washing the dishes.
Correct.
You know, and the impact that it has on your overall home and your overall life and your ability to cook because your counters are covered with dirty dishes. And it really does start there. I mean, you know, getting that under control as a habit is where everything starts.
What would be the second place you would go to after dishes?
Well, I recommend, and this is all based on my own personal experience, because it took me a long time to ever tell anybody else what to do, because I was like, seriously, this is me. Nobody should take housekeeping advice from me ever, you know. But people were asking, and so, you know, I went back to what it was that I did in the beginning. You know, I started with the dishes, not knowing what I was doing. After about 7 days, it started to feel normal and natural. I didn't have it perfected, but it just didn't feel foreign to me anymore to do them every day. And so I looked around my kitchen and I said, okay, what else drives me crazy? You know, yes, my dishes are done, but my kitchen is still messy looking all the time. And so I was like, I'm going to sweep every day. And so I started sweeping my kitchen every day. And it's really not about sweeping. You know, sweeping is about crumbs, but it's actually about combating what I call slob vision. Slob vision is, I don't see incremental mess. I see perfectly clean. I see completely messy. I do not see what happens in between. And so sweeping every day makes me see things like, oh, there's newspapers on the floor next to my husband's chair by the breakfast table. Or, oh, I brought the groceries in yesterday or last week or whatever. And, you know, I put away all the cold stuff and then I left the bags in the middle of the kitchen floor, you know, or, oh, you know, so it's seeing that kind of stuff. And so sweeping every day, that habit, that quick little habit breaks through that slob vision of things that I just don't even notice that pile up and add up until it's just a completely overwhelming mess. And, you know, again, it's like the dishes. The first day is a huge project because you are moving all that stuff. The second day, there's only one thing like that out of place, and it takes 2 or 3 minutes to sweep the kitchen. And so, you know, building that way. I have 4 habits that I focus on, building very slowly. But I always tell people, look around and say, what drives me the craziest? And then solve that problem today. And then the key is to solve it again the next day before it's actually a problem again. And then continue solving it before it turns into a problem. And then that way you start to see, oh, okay, this is the routine that actually works for our home and our family and our particular lifestyle.
So, in other words, attack the first thing or the main thing that's taking up too much head space, and then go in descending order, is what you're saying.
Yeah, what drives me craziest? Exactly.
Okay.
And when you speak of headspace, I don't know if you want me to get off track here, but one of the main things that this has helped me realize is I was making a decision every day about all of these little things that don't deserve decision-making brain power. I mean, I was like, I was analyzing whether I should do the dishes today or not. I was analyzing, should I sweep the floor or not? Where in reality, I just needed to do the dishes. And when I remove that decision, I call them pre-made decisions.
Right.
It's freeing to me. And it also yes, it doesn't let me say, well, I bet you there's not enough dishes to actually fill the dishwasher. There usually are. We're a family of 5. We don't use paper products. So those things, I mean, yes, our dishwasher is always full after one day. But if I let myself make a decision, I can usually talk myself out of doing it, saying, I bet you there's not enough, so I'll just wait till tomorrow. Well, by tomorrow, there's more than will fit in there, and then it's turned into a project again.
So, Dana, you have established non-negotiables, and then there are obviously negotiables because you just can't do everything in one day.
Right.
Tell us what your home looks like right now. You're at home in Dallas, Texas. How would you rate it? 10 is perfection, 0 is a disaster.
I'm supposed to be honest, right?
Yes.
My dishes are done, but I did not empty the dishwasher this morning. Instead, I chose to finish up that last load of laundry from my laundry day, which was yesterday, a Monday. Let's see. We could really use a 5-minute pickup, but if we did a 5-minute pickup, I would let people in the front door, which is a huge improvement over needing 2 weeks to let somebody in the front door before I started all this.
A lot of people
I will never be perfect.
A lot of people are identifying with that terror of the front doorbell ringing,
yes.
And then you assessing.
I call it FOUD. FOUD, fear of unexpected doorbells.
I'm sure that will appear in some psychiatric book at some point, Dana. Before we go to break, 2 things I want to cover. You touched on these 5-minute drills. You have 5-minute Fridays. This would be a good tip for our listeners. Tell us about them.
Well, I've actually just started this recently. I tackle a spot using my decluttering strategies that I've created, and I give myself 5 minutes because, that's about the least amount of time I could possibly justify, doing. So I tackle a spot, I take a picture, I start removing the things in the order according to my decluttering strategies that I need to. And then after 5 minutes, I take another picture, and I'm always amazed at how much progress I can make in just 5 minutes.
I love that. The fact you probably use your cell phone and take a picture before and after in just 5 minutes.
Yes.
And you have 2 questions that we should ask ourselves or ask others if they have incorporated our help in the decluttering process. So what are the 2 questions we ask ourselves when decluttering? Number 1.
Number 1, if I was looking for this item, where would I look for it first? And the key word there is would, not should. There's no analysis needed. This is just acting on instinct. If I was actually looking for my brush, where would I go first? And that's where it goes. And then the key is the second part of that question that's not a question, which is take it there right now. Don't put it in a keep pile. Don't have a keep box or a keep bag. Go ahead and take it right now so that when you get distracted, because in my world, distraction is a guarantee, not a possibility. When I get distracted, I've made progress and I don't have anything that's waiting until later for me to have to finish up, like a keep pile or keep boxes. The second question is basically the one you ask yourself when you can't answer the first one. If you ask yourself, where would I look for this first, and you don't really have an answer, then I have to ask myself, if I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one? Because if I couldn't answer the first question of where I would look for it, it's probably because I wouldn't go looking for it, which means that if I didn't even go looking for it, I would have just gone out and gotten another one if I actually needed it. And then I would have 2. And so I've had to give myself permission to say, if I didn't even know that I had it, I'm going to just go ahead and donate it. That's just what I'm going to do. And it's hard. I mean, believe me, because decluttering is like Christmas. You find all these things that you think, oh, I forgot I had that, But if I didn't know I had it, then it's really not serving any purpose, and I would just end up with more clutter when I ended up going out and buying another one.
It's a great litmus test for decluttering. I'm David Warren, your host on today's Road Show, and I'm talking with author Dana K. White. She's also a very popular blogger. Her website is slobcomesclean.com, but her new book out on Thomas Nelson Publishers is entitled How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. The book is available wherever books are sold. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to ask Dana how to get the rest of our family members to join us in the deslobification journey. Back after this.
I'm Karen Jensen Salisbury, one of the hosts you hear on the Oasis Network Roadshow. For 35 years, this 1 hour of the day has inspired and motivated you, our listeners, with thousands of stories of people whose lives demonstrate the truth that, with God, all things are possible. It's an hour that you should make a part of your day, Monday through Friday, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Roadshow, an Oasis Network presentation.
Here's a little bit about today's guest, Dana K. White. She is a blogger, speaker, and, much to her own surprise, a decluttering expert. In an attempt to get her home under control, Dana started blogging as Noni, short for anonymous, at aslobcomesclean.com. Today, Dana shares realistic home management strategies and a message of hope for the hopelessly messy through her blog, weekly podcasts, and videos. Dana lives with her husband and 3 kids just outside of Dallas, Texas. And I heard that southern accent kick in a while back when you morphed into Noni the Slob. By the way, tell us a little bit more about Noni. What have you learned about your alias or your alter personality in this process?
Well, I talked earlier about how glad I am that I use that word slob, because it set me down a path of complete honesty. But the other reason I'm so glad I used that word is, I ended up finding my people. I really, really, really thought I was the only person in the entire history of the universe that had these thoughts and these struggles, like these, seriously, why is it so hard for me? How come this is easy for everyone else in the entire world and it's so hard for me? But I found my people. It turned out there were a lot of other people who were like me. And, in the early days of blogging, when someone would leave a comment on your blog, we had profiles and things like that, so you would click on their name and you would find out what you could about them. And as people started to leave comments, which I honestly thought that all my comments were going to be people saying, you're a horrible person, get off the internet, whatever. But instead, they were people who were saying, oh my goodness, these are my struggles. These are the thoughts that I have as well. And I'm so glad that you're putting these things into words. And, they would watch how I was working through things. And as they did that, and as I would go find things out about these people, I started to see that they were all extremely creative people. Poets and artists, lots and lots of theater teachers like I was, and just so many different creative types of personalities. Mm-hmm. And it helped me see that there was a link there, like this creative brain that is part of my brain that I say, thank you, God, for making me creative, Mm-hmm. And then this part of my brain that I'm like, really, God, why did you have to make me this way? They're actually linked. They're related. Creative people see the world differently. We throw ourselves into projects at the exclusion of everything else because, that project is the thing, that creative thing that we're just driven to finish, and we're willing to let everything else go for that. And when I saw that there was a link between the part of myself that I loved and the part of myself that I couldn't stand, it helped me accept that this is part of how my brain works. And when I did that, then it gave me this freedom to say, oh, so all those organizing books that I've read over the years that I basically read through the first couple of pages and then put them down because I was like, yeah, this is like a foreign language. I was just completely lost. I always felt like, they have no idea what my starting point is. What they're calling clutter, their before pictures and my dream after pictures. I was just like, they don't even, and I would just look at that and I would say, what is wrong with me? I can't even understand this. And when I realized that it's just how my brain works, I was like, okay, I'm not a failure because traditional organizing advice doesn't work for me. But it didn't let me say, oh, well, then that's how I am. I'm just going to live this way. It was like, okay, if that doesn't work for me, then I have to figure out what does work for me and my unique personality and my unique home and my unique family. And it just gave me that freedom and that just that ability to be okay with who I was and work with it.
So did you have a defining moment when you felt like you had reached a healthy balance, that you weren't a slob and yet you weren't a perfectionist either?
Well, it's part of the process, to be honest. I've been doing this for 7.5 years now, this thing that was supposed to be temporary for a couple months. And a big part of it for me has been realizing that this will always be a struggle. Like, I will always throw myself into projects and my house will get crazy. That's just me. That's how I roll. But now I know how to, keep the dishes done and keep the laundry done so that it doesn't, go into full-fledged, complete and total craziness. But I also know where to start back as, things slow down. I'm like, okay, well, I know exactly what to do to get back on track. I used to just think, oh, well, that didn't work. I got to start completely over. Now I'm like, nope, start with the dishes, do the laundry, start with my habits. I feel like I've started rambling and I can't remember what I was saying.
I love that. I love that because that is so real about you. Now, okay, remind me, what is that acronym for fear of the doorbell ringing that so many of us have?
I call it FOUD, fear of unexpected doorbell.
Okay, fear of unexpected doorbell, FOUD. Okay, for short. So one of the things that I love on your website, aslobcomesclean.com, and it may be the takeaway moment from this roadshow. If it's the only thing that somebody remembers 3 months down the road, it should be this. You have a very great phrase that you use. It's people over pride. And then you follow it with people matter more than, and then that thing that makes you crazy. For you, it was the dirty dishes. So people over dirty dishes, meaning if a fouled moment happens, the doorbell does ring, you're going to think more about the person than you're going to think about the dirty dishes.
And it's hard. I still write about those things because it's still difficult. It's still difficult to let people in the front door when it's a mess. I explained to you earlier that, with a good 5-minute pickup, I'd be more than happy to let somebody in. But if somebody knocked on the door right now, it would be a real temptation to say, hey, let's enjoy the pretty weather outside and talk out in the front yard.
Push them out into the front yard. So you have this mantra. So the doorbell rings. You mentioned that the dishes are still in the dishwasher, which isn't really bad. But you then
they were in the sink during that post. I mean, It was like the dishwasher was full and they were piled up in the sink.
But I mean today. I'm talking about today. But anyhow, or then or today, you could go into that mantra of people over pride. That person at the door is more important than the fact I have dirty dishes. And I'm not going to push them out into the yard. I'm going to allow him or her to come into my home if they're a friend or a family member.
And that's what I tell people when they say, so are you completely cured? And I say, well, I have made huge improvements. My home is so much better than it ever was before. But at the same time, I've also realized I'm not the only person out there who struggles with this, and that I am not doing myself or anyone else a favor by trying to pretend like I have it all together. That's the biggest thing that God has done in me through this whole process, is showing me that we have weaknesses for a purpose. We are created to not be able to do it all. Like, we are jars of clay. We're fragile. The cracks are there. And when we try to hide them from people and we try to pretend like we have everything together by keeping them out of our house, then, it's through the cracks that God's glory shines. Mm-hmm. I mean, He gets the glory when people see, oh, wow, yes, she's got cracks too. I mean, she doesn't have it all together. Everybody has something they struggle with. Everyone does. this is mine. And honestly, compared to a lot of other things, I'm thankful that this is the one that God gave me to use, for his glory. I mean, that's what he showed me is, bring the people in. I'm much more willing to let people see my mess than I used to be, because they may need to see it.
That's a good point. So the phrase is people over pride, or people matter more than, and then fill in the blank. But, for clean freaks, we can adapt the phrase people over perfection, because we can go through that same angst of not wanting to let people in our homes because those people are going to mess up our homes. And that really exists.
Yes.
I'm talking from experience here, Dana.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have to have a different mindset. Tell yourself, no, people over perfection. That person is more than the little bit of mess that may occur because they have entered into my home. Because otherwise we're going to lead such small lives. Don't you think, Dana?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my main thing for hospitality is people need a place to be. They need a place to sit down and relax, so that we're not only getting to know each other in the aisles at church when everybody's got their best clothes on and we're all saying, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. How about you? Oh, I'm fine. They need a place to sit down and get to know each other and, have conversations and be real. I mean, that's what people are craving. And so my home is a place for people to be, just to be together and develop those relationships that are so incredibly important.
Before we take our final break, Dana, how do you incorporate your husband's personality type and your children's personality types in the corporate or family deslobification process? How does that balance work?
And how long do I have to talk about this?
Well, a little bit.
Okay, so the short answer on that is that one of the gifts was that I did not tell my husband that I was doing this for about the first 6 weeks, which meant that I didn't tell my kids either. I was only focused on what I was doing and what I wasn't doing. Every time I tried to, change before, have the family sit down, and I would say, okay, this is how we're going to do things from now on. Everything changes starting now. And because I wasn't able to do that because of the secret that I was keeping, and the secret was because I was so sure that I was going to fail, I had to focus on myself. And by doing that, I saw the huge impact that our home experienced just from what I was doing. And it made me see that it was me. I was the mama, and I had set the tone for things. I had, we had a routine of not having a routine. I had taught them that there was no routine. And my husband, who, lived as a bachelor, lived on his own until he was 32. And he not, from birth to 32, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, he'd had a perfectly fine for a bachelor apartment. It was great. But it was when he married me that he lived in, total mess because there was no routine. He would do dishes, he would do laundry, but there was no routine for, it didn't have any lasting impact because of the no routine. I compare it to an escalator. You walk up to an escalator, if it's going really, really fast and then stops completely and then goes super slow and then really, really fast, that was me and cleaning, was just these crazy projects and then completely stop and be done. And then really, really slow trying to dig it out. And then crazy, crazy frantic again. You're not going to step on an escalator like that. There's just no predictability, and it's scary, and I'm just going to stay away from that. But when the reason you're willing to step onto an escalator is that it's consistent. And
That's
so
good.
It's like, okay, well, if I put my foot here, it's going to take me up there, and I'm going to be okay. So, now my husband runs the dishwasher as often as I do because he knows this is the routine that keeps our home under control. And he knows I'm going to keep going with that routine. It's actually going to have an impact on the home.
It's like a pace
not
car.
Not always trying to dig out of a mess.
It's a pace car. You're setting the pace. You're
Yes.
setting the pace for the home.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, we're going to take one break, or for our final break. and come back, and I want to talk about your website. So everybody, if you're near a computer or your smartphone, pull up this website, aslobcomesclean.com, aslobcomesclean.com. Remember to put the A
But
in
not
front
if
of...
you're driving.
But what?
But not if you're driving.
No, not if you're driving. Exactly. Good advice.
Okay.
All right. Dana K. White is the person who runs that website. She's also got a new book out on Thomas Nelson Publishers, available wherever books are sold. And the name of the book is How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. We're going to take a short break and be back for the wrap-up after this. Oasis listeners, there are so many good reasons to visit us at oasisnetwork.org. You can access song information, our business sponsors listed by category, details on your favorite radio programs, plus our popular online listening. And while there, click on the Facebook link to like us and stay up to date on what's going on here at the Oasis. Again, our internet website address is oasisnetwork.org. Well, on today's program, we have been learning how to manage our homes without losing our minds, and that goes for us clean freaks as well as recovering slobs, because you have to get that pace down. It can't be too slow or non-existent or inconsistent, and it can't be too fast. There's got to be a healthy balance, and we will enjoy our lives once we find that balance. And that's where you come in, Dana. You help people who feel like, I look at clutter and I just either don't know what to do or I do know what to do, but for some reason I don't do it. And so that's how you are helping people all across our land with your reality-based cleaning and organizing. You've got great tips. You've got great videos on your website, aslobcomesclean.com. You've got a brand new book out wherever books are sold called How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. Again, her name is Dana K. That's an initial, Dana K. White. And let's talk just a little bit before we say goodbye about your website. I love your Declutter TV. I touched on it earlier, but that's where Noni, your alias, really shines. Tell us what we'll find on your website, Dana.
Well, you want to know specifically about Declutter TV?
Yeah. For example, how does Noni, or what are her thoughts on attacking a laundry pile?
Okay. Well, let's talk about laundry. So all of the real organized people will tell you to do a load a day. And that is so great if it works for you. But this is one of those areas where I just could not make that work. Like, I could not. I would put the load in, and then it would never occur to me again. And then the next day I'd go to put the daily load in, and I would be like, oh, yeah, yesterday's load is still in there, and now it stinks, and I have to wash it again with vinegar. And anyway, so that was my reality. And I tried. You know, I added new habits every week, but I spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to figure out laundry. And I finally kind of went old-fashioned, like what women used to do in the olden days. And I was like, I'm just going to try a laundry day. I had tried it at one point when my kids were little bitty, and it worked for me, and I don't know why I stopped it, but that's the kind of thing I would do. And laundry day is perfect for my project-loving mentality. So what I do, you know, Sunday nights, the kids, they come, they sort all their clothes into piles outside the laundry room, and then over the course of Monday, I wash all of those clothes. Now, I have to clarify, though, that I can get it all done in less than a day because I've been doing it consistently. But the first laundry day is like the worst experience of your entire life if you're someone like me. Because if you are so behind on laundry that you've been like going out and buying new clothes because you didn't have enough because they were all dirty, and then you've got, you know, outgrown baby clothes in the bottom of your 3-year-old hamper, you know, I mean, that's basically what I was doing.
That's pretty bad, yeah.
It was, yeah. And so, I mean, we can all laugh, but it was totally true. So anyway, because I was only ever doing emergency load. You know, it was just kind of skim the top off and do that.
Underwear.
Yes, underwear, socks, basics that you have to have, yeah. So it was so hard, you know, to gather up all the laundry in the entire house. I mean, the first laundry day can take a week. to get through all of that. But the key is to start the second laundry day on the next Monday. If you're doing it on Monday, then the second laundry day, even if the first one takes until Sunday night,
right,
to get through every bit of clothes, you have to then again start it on Monday. And the thing is, as you wear clothes, those don't go back into those piles that they were in. Those don't go into the piles of that week's laundry day. They go into a hamper. That's next week's laundry day. So the second laundry day, even though you're mad that you just finished the first one, then you get to experience what it's like to actually just do 1 week's worth of clothing. And then the third laundry day is the one where you're like, oh my word, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, because on the third one, you've experienced 6 days where you didn't have to think about laundry.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't even feel guilty not thinking about laundry. Everybody had clean underwear. Everybody had clean socks all week long. We're all happy, wonderful, lovely. And it was awesome. And then you think about it and you tackle it as a project, which goes really well with my brain. And then you have, 6 days where you don't have to worry about it. And that has worked for me for, I would say, 6 years now. I've been probably 6.5 years I've been doing it that way. And it is still shocking to me how well that works for our family.
One of the great features on your website, Dana, is that you have cleaning checklists or decluttering checklists, and part of those checklists are for kids. Tell us how that's working out with your kids and other kids around the country.
Well, I have an ebook that is called Teaching Kids to Clean, and I have checklists for daily checklists. Sometimes we print those out and use them when we need to refocus. But my goal for any daily checklist is that it be so basic that I can go through it in my head. I don't, eventually once I get it down. But having the printables helps me maintain and, start that focus off. With my kids, one of the things that's really important to me is teaching them cleaning skills, making sure that they know how to clean a bathroom. They know the basics of vacuuming and dusting and laundry and all those kinds of things. So we focus on that when we can, meaning usually in the summer when they're home all day, we work on that, or we work on it on a Saturday. I always try to encourage people, because this is my perspective, to use the times that you have. And I used to give up because I was like, well, I did that and then it fizzled. It's like, they remember. And so it's worth it to have the random, okay, guys, time to clean again, because I've spent focused time teaching them cleaning skills, I can say, hey, guys, you do this, you do this, you do this, and we can get the house, ready and cleaned all together, and it actually works. Now, it's not fun in the beginning when they're little and you're teaching them. It's
right.
Kind of like, pulling out your fingernails. But
well, Dana, we are pretty much out of time, but I do want to mention that you have daily or weekly emails that our listeners can sign up for through your website, aslobcomesclean.com. And again, there's so many goodies on there, including that real fun Declutter TV starring Noni the Slob. And your new book's out. Congratulations on it. It's on a major publisher, Thomas Nelson Publishers, available wherever books are sold. Again, today's guest's name is Dana, the initial K, last name White. The name of the new book, How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. We have just a minute left. But Dana, let me say that you are no slob. I think you're a genius, and I thank you for coming up with all these great solutions to help other people that have really identified with how you have felt, which may be the majority of people listening today. And so just real shortly, are you hearing from people around the country that are joining the deslobification process?
Absolutely. I get emails and comments daily. I can't even count the number of times I've been told, I think we were separated at birth, or you are my long-lost twin, or how do we share a brain? How have you been inside my house? So, yeah, there are a lot of people in this world who struggle, and a lot of people who thought they were the only one.
Well, the best way to reach today's guest and join the deslobification process is to visit her on her website, aslobcomesclean.com. Her real name, Dana K. White, and she is a delight. I'm David Warren, your host. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time, and I want to wrap up today's program by saying it's been another great road show.
You've been listening to The Road Show. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Road Show, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Roadshow, an Oasis Network presentation.